Hello, everybody. My name is Alan, and it's that time again. Let's talk metal. Got some really cool stuff to share with you tonight. We are going to go globetrotting and check out some killer EPs from all around the world that were released during the 1980s. I'm going to check out 5 entries from 5 different countries. Got a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's get started. And we're going to start on the other side of the planet, New Zealand, because that's the first place you always think of when you hear the words heavy metal, right? Okay, maybe not. Have been some cool heavy metal releases from New Zealand over the years, and we're going to start with one of them here tonight. 12-inch EP by a band called Confessor. The EP was called First Sin. It came out in 1985. And let's give a listen to the track Soldier of Hate. All right, there is a little bit from Confessor, Soldier of Hate off the First Sin EP, 1985. Very cool EP. All the tracks on it are very good. Like those stinging guitars in it. Reminds me a lot of what you'd have heard from Europe at the time. The band picture is at least nice confirmation that people in America weren't the only ones who looked that lame in 1985. Sorry if we exported that look to you, New Zealand. Our bad. But yeah, regardless, excellent EP. Like this one quite a bit. None of the members seem to have gone on to other projects, and the band recorded some live material. They did some demo recordings, but never had another official release come out. Interestingly, there is an anthology that came out around 2011 that has the EP and all these other, demos and live tracks and stuff. I have not been able to check that one out. So if somebody else has heard the whole anthology, leave a comment down below, please, and let me know how those other tracks are. I'd be interested to check it out sometime. Interestingly, the compilation came out on the same record label that the EP was released on almost 30 years earlier than that. So it wasn't just a small label. It must be a thing in New Zealand. Who knew? But regardless, cool EP. Obviously, a little bit of a hard one to track down, especially outside of New Zealand. Not a whole lot of copies got imported to the United States 35 years ago, so you may have to dig around to find it, but it is an excellent EP to get us started with. Going from strength to strength, we're going to stay on that side of the world, maybe the same time zone. I don't really know, but it's the closest thing I know of to New Zealand, and that's Australia. They're like right next to each other, right? I hope. We'll check out one of my favorite heavy metal EPs of all time, Australia's incredible Taipan. Going to do a couple of clips from this one. Let's start with the track Breakout. absolute smoker there with Breakout from Taipan. And because I like this EP so much, and all the tracks kick so much ass, let's play a clip from another one, and you can look at a different version of it, which I'll explain in a minute after we check out a little bit of the track called Lady. Another screamer from Taipan's EP. This is a just killer EP. Love all 4 tracks off of it. Has a little bit of a weird history to it. Just showed you 2 very different looking versions. The 7-inch version with the kind of mystical lady cover. This is the original pressing from Australia. The 12-inch version with the very, very green cover, as in this cover is so green, I ask you, how much more green could it be? And the answer is none. None more green. This is a reissue that came out on the Bullet label and was available in European territories. Same 4 tracks on both versions. There is some discrepancy about when these 2 versions got released. For example, if you look on Metal Archives, it lists the 7-inch as coming out in 1982 and the 12-inch coming out in 1983. However, if you look on Discogs, it has the 7-inch listed as 1981 and this version is 1984. Now, usually I give the tiebreaker to Discogs. My bias is that people on Discogs are a little more careful about double checking things when they enter information. However, I'm a little hard-pressed to believe they came out that far apart. So in this case, maybe Metal Archives is right. Maybe each of them has one right and one wrong. I don't know. If you do know for sure when each version came out, again, leave a comment down below and help me untangle this mess. Regardless, it was not the only thing Taipan put out. They did get another release out a little later. It was titled 1770. And the title right away should start to make you wonder what's going on here. It's a little weird sounding. And it's an odd sounding release. The band was definitely trying to change direction, but didn't quite know which way to go yet. Sonically, it's a real mess of a release. Very disappointing after the high octane heavy metal of this EP. The band also did some live recordings, some demos back in their early days. You can find those digging around online. And a lot of them are very good and very strong in the tradition of this first classic EP. Now, Taipan did get back together much later and released several albums. I picked up the first couple when they came out to check them out because I loved the EP so much. And they weren't bad albums, but they weren't spectacular albums either, to be honest. They were, sort of like, okay, that's an average, decent, all right, heavy metal album. It was definitely not the kind of thing I went back and replayed a lot over and over. It's kind of a good example with some of these reunion projects where you just can't recapture that original raw vibe and the energy and enthusiasm you had when you were making your original recordings back in your late teens and early 20s, 30, 35 years ago. But hey, if anyone's heard some of the more recent Taipan records and one of them really kicks ass, again, let me know in the comments down below. I'll be glad to check it out. So yeah, Taipan. Cool EP. The 7-inch version is hard to find, but the 12-inch version has never been that difficult to track down, and it's never been an expensive one either. So, not something difficult if you're interested in owning a copy. All right, so let's move over to Europe. One of the coolest countries for 80s metal in all of Europe was Italy. And we're going to check out a track by this band called Rollerball. That's a very, very 80s name. And this was their first 3-track 12-inch EP. And that's a very, very 80s heavy metal cover. This right here, this is why you don't let your buddy in 8th grade art class make your record cover for you. It's not that bad. Kind of fun in a way. So yeah, the EP is called Outlast the Game. And the title track's probably, or sorry, Rollerball's probably the best track on here, but we're going to play a different one because one of the songs on here is called, and I swear this is true, Do You Know Alan? Come on, I got to play that one. Let's check it out. All right, there, a little taste of Rollerball. The other tracks on here are a little speedier, probably a little better to be honest, but come on, they wrote a song about me. I've got to put it on here. Rollerball didn't have a whole lot of output. Like these other bands we're talking about, the members didn't go on to other projects. They didn't have a really long catalog. They did a demo prior to the EP, and then they did one more 12-inch release. It was called Don't Push the Button. It has a cover that is almost as bad as that one. If you don't believe me, go look it up. Go ahead, pause the video. Oh, wait. Okay, you're back. I was right. It's pretty atrocious looking, isn't it? I've never heard that one, so I don't know if it's in the same style as this. But yeah, Outlast the Game is a fun EP, some speedy tracks on it, good stuff. It's a band that doesn't have that traditional doomy sound to it that a lot of Italian bands had in the 80s. They're much more straightforward, a little bit more like Crying Steel and some of those bands from the Italian scene. Good stuff for sure. All right, we got 2 more stops to make on our little globe-trotting tour here. So let's move over to Canada and move up to 1988 for one of my favorite EPs, just real over-the-top cool release. And this is from Canada's Solar Eagle, 12-inch EP, 4 tracks. And we are going to check out a little bit of the song called Sea. There's a little bit of Solar Eagle. Crazy sound, very unique band. Love the swirling guitars. The really over-the-top vocals just makes for an excellent slab of heavy metal. The band only did one demo other than this, so their whole back catalog is pretty much about 8 songs. The demo is also excellent. The tracks are very much in the same vein as what you hear on the EP here. Now, some things about the Solar Eagle story. Again, like a lot of the ones I'm talking about tonight, the members didn't really have a long, prolific career. You did have at least one member joined the band Candle Opera, which was a sort of a short-lived, more power metal, proggy a little bit project in the early 90s in Canada. But the Solar Eagle EP has kind of a convoluted collecting history. So this is kind of, think of it as public service announcement. If you're interested in collecting some of these older, more obscure records, you do need to do your homework before you run out and start trying to buy them. Some things about the Solar Eagle. First off, there's a really nice anthology that has the EP and the demo. It's easy to get. It's not very expensive. You can have the whole catalog right there and check out all the cool songs they did. If you do really want an original copy of the EP, you've got to watch what you're doing because it was bootlegged about 10 years ago. Around 2012, 2013, bootleg copies started showing up, people trying to pass them off as originals. You can tell them apart if you know what to look for, but yeah, if you don't know what to look for, you could end up spending a lot of money for just, a cheap knockoff copy that's not even a decade old. That sucks. Nobody wants to do that. Another thing to keep in mind with the Solar Eagle, if you look at the price history, if you go through completed auctions on sites like PopPsych, or you look at sales records on places like Discogs, you'll see some copies that have sold for crazy amounts of money, like pushing the $1,000 mark. This is a really good example of where you got to pay attention to the dates of those items when they were actually sold. Because the really, really high dollar copies of Solar Eagle, those are ancient history. That's a long time ago when the copies were selling for that much. In more recent years, the price has come way, way down on that record. And it's a combination of several factors. You've had the bootlegs entered the market. You've had the nice official anthology entered the market. And you also had one of the band members turned up at a record show, I think it was in London around 2016-ish, and had a bunch of old stock copies left that he put onto the collector's market. And so all of those things have put a lot more copies out there than there used to be, and as such, the record's much, much cheaper than it used to be. It's still a bit pricey, but nowhere near as bad as it was if you were trying to buy it, 10, 15 years ago. So if you see it listed on some site and people are still trying to ask like, $666 or some other metal sounding price, no. That's way, way, way too much to be paying for it these days. It's still not cheap, but it can be gotten a lot cheaper than that. Okay, so there's my little collecting public service announcement for tonight. Got one more cool EP to check on before we wrap this up. Our last stop is going to be the United Kingdom. I'm going to stay in 1988, same year that Solar Eagle was putting out their Canadian EP. A band in the UK was putting out a 12-inch 4-track EP that's also a killer. The EP is called Mechanarchy, and it's by a band called Wild Pussy. I'm sure with a name like that, you can understand why they didn't make it very far. But musically, this thing kicks a lot of ass. Let's check out a sample of Ready to Strike.
Mythology, and now it's screaming out in static voice. Into the
You were not expecting something from the UK to sound like that from 1988, now were you? Be honest. Nobody was. Really forceful, powerful sound. This is not new wave of British heavy metal at all. This is very much moving forward. It's got elements of power, speed, touches of thrash. Some of the guitar solos later on in have very reminiscent of like what Halloween was doing around that time. A lot of the music has that very powerful kind of gruff sound to it. It reminds me a bit of classic early Panzer, for example. Not a sound you associate with British heavy metal acts. So yeah, between the unusual style of the music and the not exactly ready for the BBC band name, no surprise that Wild Pussy did not follow this up with global domination and international tours. Once again, members don't seem to have been involved in a lot of other projects. The only other recording I'm aware of is a demo that came out the year before, around 1987. This is one that surprisingly has not gotten a reissue or anthology treatment at this point. And I'm not sure why, because as you just heard, musically it is excellent. All the tracks on this one are top notch material. So, labels out there, hi, my name is Alan. You should track this down and get it reissued. People would like it, people would buy it. You never know what the deal is with those reissued projects. Sometimes a band member just doesn't want the music put back out there. They've become a professional or a soccer dad, or they've been born again and they don't want anything to do with their musical past. They're embarrassed by it. Sometimes the person holding the rights to it wants a sultan's ransom because they think it's the greatest thing ever, pressed into vinyl grooves, and labels just are, only going to pay you so much to release a 4-track EP from 30 years ago that is maybe going to sell a few hundred copies worldwide at best. But regardless, I would love to see Mechanarchy get a reissue. It's an excellent one. It's an interesting window on a different take on British heavy metal from right there around 1988. By that time, all the focus was, of course, on Bolt Thrower and Carcass and some of the thrash bands like Sabbath. So to hear that kind of traditional, just pounding metal assault by a British band, pretty cool, I think. All right, that is going to wrap it up for tonight. We've heard 5 great EPs from 5 unknown bands from around the world. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of some of these. If you've heard other recordings by some of these bands, definitely let me know about them. Things that I might need to check out myself. I will probably be doing more of these kind of killer metal EP videos in the near future. Got a lot of them that I'm very excited to share with you, but we're going to have to save those until another night. So for now, everybody take care. And as always, keep banging your head.